This year's race for the Most Valuable Player of the Year award has to be one of the tightest and close calls in recent NBA history. By the time this video comes out, the 2021-2022 MVP should have already been announced and won by either Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, or Giannis Antetokounmpo. Whichever way it ends up going, I can confidently say that there's going to be major backlash from fans on who really deserved the MVP, and for good reason. All three of the aforementioned players have the case of winning the MVP, but for today's video, I'm going to explain why I believe the system used to determine the MVP is completely flawed and should be redone. So let's get started, shall we? Now before we start off with the video, I want to know who your MVP is this year, so let me know in the comment section down below. Once the video is done, go back to the comments and let me know if I changed your mind on who really deserved the MVP. And if you do have any other notes or ideas you think I missed out on, you can always let me know in the comment section too. While you're there, make sure you leave a like on this video if you think the MVP race is flawed, or if you just end up enjoying the video. Make sure you subscribe so that you know whenever I post a new video, which is daily. And the last thing I wanted to announce was that I'm opening up a Patreon, so if you want to support me and what I do here on YouTube, you can do so by gaining a membership. I have one of the cheapest Patreons out there, and you'll get early access to all my videos and shoutouts on here, as well as many other things. Thank you guys so much, and now let's see what's so wrong with the MVP race. The term MVP has been skewed itself over the years. The most valuable player. What does that even actually mean? The most valuable player to a franchise? Like someone that if you substituted with would not achieve the same level of success? Most valuable player as in the most valuable player in the league? The best player in the league? Should individual success weigh more in the discussion or team success? I hope you see what I'm trying to get at. Current voter tendencies have the MVP race broken down into essentially three main points: a player's team success, individual statistics, and narratives. As this season evidently shows from talk shows like ESPN's First Take and Undisputed, it's not uncommon for the best player on the best team notion to be thrown around. Devin Booker is the example from this year. He's leading the Phoenix Suns leaps and bounds ahead of the second place Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference. The reason behind people always praising the best player on the best team from the information I've gathered is because the best player on the best team is supposedly impacting the ability to win at the highest level. While I'm diametrically opposed to this idea, and I'll explain later why, it's an undeniable factor in media voting. Aside from knowing which teams are really good, which, in this case, takes a quick glance at the standings and nothing else, there also has to be some way to recognize the best player on those teams. This is where the box score comes in. While traditional box score statistics seem to be the most telling indicators of MVP winners, so much that the historical MVP results that Fueled Basketball Reference's MVP tracking model found that points, rebounds, and assists per game were three of the four most signaling variables in predicting voting outcome alongside team record, I will define this branch as more whole due to sparser but present references to advanced statistics like PER and win shares. Narratives are the last part that I believe have a driving force when fueling a player's discussions for MVP. Narratives are perhaps less decisive, but still an influential part of the equation. Because it's difficult to tell exactly how much impact these have on voting, we do have examples of times where narratives had a major impact on voters during the MVP race. Among these are Russell Westbrook's 2017 NBA season. He accomplished a feat that many deemed were impossible by averaging a triple-double. Although this is a more statistically driven case, there was widespread significance to these numbers as Westbrook would be breaking a record set by Oscar Robertson back in 1962, so there were many strong hints of storytelling in this instant. Also, the narratives around superstar teammate Kevin Durant leaving for the team that beat them in the postseason and the subsequent increase in authority given to Russell Westbrook also drove his case home. Another instant would be Derrick Rose's 2011 MVP season. I don't want to discredit his work at all as he was the top player in the league back then, but it was clear that the narrative of being the youngest MVP and a hometown hero really gained attraction when it came to his MVP votes. As I mentioned before, value is a loosely defined concept, which often leads to dissenting opinions. Without going too deep into what I believe defines value, as this video would be far too long if that were the case, I believe value in a player and their game is determined by how well they can positively impact their team's point differentials. There are many ways to have a positive impact for your team other than scoring, such as passing and defense. The same logic applies to the improper connection between winning at a player level and winning at a team level. Winning at a player level would simply be represented by a hypothetical parameter of exactly how many wins a player contributes to his team. All it takes is a damning example in recent history to disprove this. Anthony Davis, while on the New Orleans Pelicans from 2015 to 2019, was seen as arguably a top 10 player in the league, yet his team only managed to barely surmount the average mark in terms of SRS in 2 of those 5 years. But does that mean, because the Pelicans were a sub 500 team, Davis's ability to impact an NBA team was invalid? By no means is this true. I'm not one to throw around impact metrics without attempting some sort of adjustment to the confoundments, but between those 5 seasons, Anthony Davis clocked in no less than 7.2 win shares in the season, making him an extremely likely candidate for a title of the most valuable player. Contrary to popular belief, there is a lot of historical analysis that suggests a player becomes more valuable to a team as it becomes worse. The premise is that because the team becomes more reliant on a player and his skills are put more to use in that situation. The increased role would mean the team's win pace would actually be impacted to a higher degree by any player as the remaining roster's quality is weakened. One argument that people have for the MVP is that the team quality plays a large factor. You can't be on a bad team and be the MVP. That shows a lack of leadership, even if your team is bad. It's considered the most valuable player. And sure, you might be the most valuable player on your team, but when your team is meaningless, you're not exactly valuable. This argument implies an axiomatic truth that states a player, if he so bears the value of an MVP caliber player, must be able to transform the worst possible team into a good team. Only the greatest of the great are able to change the direction of an organization with their leadership alone. And I'm talking the greatest of the great. Once in a generation type players like LeBron James, which also leads me to the last point I want to talk about in this video. Before we have a look at one last thing that is flawed with the MVP race, I just wanted to remind you to leave a like on this video if you made it this far. I still have a super small channel here, so each like really helps push out my videos. Make sure you subscribe if you enjoy the content so that you know whenever I post a video, and it only takes a second. Leave a comment letting me know if you agree with the MVP race being flawed and who you believe the MVP is of this year. And also make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help me out one step further while getting access to exclusive perks like shoutouts in these videos. Thank you once again. Unfortunately, voters fatigue exists when it comes to deciding who the MVP is. LeBron James is the prime candidate for what I mean by voters fatigue. He won his first MVP in the 08-09 season, won it again the year after that, lost to Derrick Rose the year after, and then won 2 more after that. I believe if voters fatigue didn't exist, he would have easily won the MVP Derrick Rose stole from him, as that year was narrative driven. Before you get mad at me, ask yourself, who was the best player in the league? The one that should be considered the most valuable player in the entire NBA. It was obviously LeBron. I think the same case could be had with the 2013-14 season, where KD stopped LeBron from getting 3 consecutive MVP awards. LeBron was still the best player in the league by far. This would already put him at 6 MVPs instead of 4. I think if we really want to start nitpicking, LeBron James should have won the MVP award over James Harden in the 2018 season. That would put LeBron at an insane 7 MVPs. Just think of how crazy that sounds. Voters fatigue is unfortunately a must because in the end of the day, the NBA is a business, and if they made it obvious that LeBron was the clear-cut MVP, then a majority of the fans wouldn't get excited and less attention would be generated as it would be obvious who the MVP was. The NBA loves changes in narratives. Think back to when it was the Golden State Warriors vs Cavaliers in the finals every year. Year after year, the overall viewership numbers were dropping to all-time lows, and only after there was new competition, we saw a rise in those numbers. If someone wins continuously for multiple years, narratives will rise on how these star players played with lesser competition, leading to them having easy success. The best example out there would be the Boston Celtics' early championship success. Although I do get the argument of how there were only 8 teams in the league back then and the overall skill set was lower, I don't think this should discredit the Celtics and Bill Russell's legacy too much, considering everyone was on the same playing field in terms of technology and knowledge. Let me paint you a picture. Let's say LeBron did win 6 or 7 MVPs. What do you think people would say about LeBron? He was going up against easier competition and the overall skill level was lower in the NBA? This would obviously be not true. The main points I want you to take away from this video is that the NBA is a business at heart, and there isn't anything fun about one person winning MVP for multiple years because it makes it repetitive and boring. The NBA is always looking for new narratives and ways to stir up the pot. I also believe we shouldn't judge the quality of a player's MVP case by his team's circumstances. It's called the most valuable player for a reason. To me, the MVP should be the person who is deemed the most valuable player in the league, whether they're on an 8th seeded team or the 1st seed. But I digress. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. It really means a lot. Make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe so that you know whenever I post a new video and to help my small channel to grow. Let me know who you think your MVP is this season in the comment section down below, and if you agree with me seeing the MVP race is flawed. Join my Patreon if you want to help me out one step further so I can keep producing content for y'all. And as always, until next time, cheers.